Mia Farrow pertenece a la aristocracia de Hollywood. Es hija de la actriz Maureen O'Sullivan, compañera de Tarzán, y de John Farrow, un gran director de cine. Mia Farrow comenzó su carrera como actriz en la teleserie Peyton Place, pero su gran momento en el cine lo tuvo con Rosemary's Baby, dirigida por Roman Polanski. Mia Farrow es una de las grandes actrices modernas que trajo un nuevo estilo de belleza y actuación, a la vez juvenil y maduro. Mia Farrow, did you ever know about your talents in writing, as you have shown in your new book, What Falls Away?
That's very nice of you to say. In school, I could write a little. I don't think my talent is immense, but this is my first book, and I am proud of it. It was agony to write it. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But when it goes well, it's exhilarating. So I've started another book.
What is this new book? Fiction?
I'm hoping a novel, fiction. That's what I would like to write. But we'll see.
And this first book of yours, you say that it was a struggle for you to write. Did you have to struggle not only with the fact of writing, but with discipline and with in a complete new thing?
Yes, many forces came into play. The first one, and the most daunting, was the fact that I'd never written anything before. So just simply, that in itself was the most awesome thing, just the blank page. The second thing was, technically, I don't know how to type. So I wrote it out in very, very illegible handwriting. And I hired a woman to type it out. But she couldn't read any of it, so I stood behind her and told her what everything meant. And I wasn't getting enough work done because this process was so lengthy. So then I decided, this is really silly after a week or so of this. I better learn to type. And I got a computer and a printer and then set about it in earnest because the other was hopeless. So there was that. And then there was the emotional content, later on in the book. I delayed this 4 years. I took 3.5 years longer than my original contract with them, with Doubleday, because of all these variables. And one more thing, I'm a mother of 13 children, and just getting to it was something. I mean, my daughter's now 3, but, she was newborn 3 years ago, so I was up all night. I have a 5-year-old, my little boy who you just met. I have 7 children now living at home, so it's busy, And I did 4 films, and we moved house here to the country. So with all this going on, it was, just finding the time was difficult. But I still think the hardest was actually wrestling it into shape.
In your book, What Falls Away, the beginning is yourself at the age of 9, having a crisis of polio. What was the impact of that illness in your life?
It gave me a view of life that I don't think children should have, probably, and certainly I wouldn't have had. A view of life as a crisis in which people are suffering, people are in pain, people are afraid, people are sick, and I was immersed in that. And I think it took away these sort of blithe, careless days of childhood, and they were replaced by a sense of what the world is, the flip side of the coin. And I think it weighted my childhood and my whole life, really.
You are the daughter of a movie actress, and your father was a movie director. And when you were a child, you thought you would be a nun. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, how did you move from that thought into become what you are, a great movie actress?
Thank you. By the time I was 16 or so, I realized I was not nun material. I finally listened to the people around me, and I said, "You're right. I think this isn't going to work." At that point, I set my sights on becoming a pediatrician, and I wanted to work in Southeast Asia or Africa with children. I loved children always, and I thought that would be a good way to spend my life. And then my father died, and this was when I was 17. And my mother was working, and I had 5 younger brothers and sisters. And it seemed it was not possible for me to go back to school. And I had to pull my own weight, and maybe, if I could, help my mother. So without an education, the only thing I felt I could give a try, aside from waiting tables, but even then I was young. I gave myself 3 or 4 months. I said, I had no conviction that anyone would want to hire me, but I thought it was worth a try because it was something I could do in school, and it was fun.
Who are the actors that you remember you had met in your early childhood? I, for instance, read in the book that Charles Boyer told you are not going to become a nun, and your life is not going to be too easy. What do you think at long perspective about that occasion with you and Charles Boyer walking and talking?
Well, I've thought of it from time to time over the years, and I put it in the book because it was such a strange moment, and I liked him so much. So the moment never left me, and it has resonated as I've gone through difficult passages, and it seems to be more than the usual amount of maybe good things and bad things. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what he saw in me that led him to make such a remark that my life would be difficult.
He was a wonderful man.
He was great. He was so attractive, and he was so kind. I was nuts about him.
At that age, you could tell that he was a very handsome, attractive man.
Yeah, and his son was handsome, too. I was in love with his son, who was my age.
You grew up a daughter of a famous actress, and now you are a famous actress and a mother. Is there a difference between your childhood experiences and your children now?
I think it's a very different experience. When we're here in rural Connecticut, if you see out the window, my 9-year-old has 2 cows. We have 24 chickens. I mean, just the ambiance is different. They go to school with kids whose parents are in every kind of profession. And it's a more realistic kind of life here. Beverly Hills was where I grew up, and most of the people in my class, their parents were in the movie industry. And the parents were very uncertain of their positions because they were without families and had created a new structure in Hollywood, and nobody really knew what that meant in the long run, nor could we, the children, see what place we would find in that community as adults. As children, we had a very specific place. We were the much adored children of movie stars. Our photographs were worth taking, and people were interested in our lives, but we understood that we were going to outgrow that, and none of us knew what that meant.
And what is the difference between the privileged children those days and now?
I think our parents did their best to give us what they could, but the circumstances were so precarious in the whole town that there was no perception of a reality outside that place. My mother lived through the 30s and was completely unaware of the Depression when I asked her about it. She said, well, we really didn't feel that in Beverly Hills. She read about it if she read any newspapers, but it didn't have any relationship to her life there. The world outside Hollywood was just, what box office numbers, there was no perception of it. So I think there was a high casualty rate among the children in my generation. I don't know if it's any different now. I don't know what's happening there because I don't live there anymore. But that was the difficult part for me.
How was life like in those days for you?
Well, we had 3 nannies, and there were 7 children. That was unusual for Hollywood. We were an Irish Catholic family. We 7 were close in age, about a year apart. So there was a lot of fighting. We looked alike, all the children, and we sort of wanted the same thing, so it was very competitive. These 3 nannies were from Scotland and England, and they took care of us. They had beautiful uniforms, and there was a speaker in our nursery that my father could talk to us and hear us. And they would come in, you know, they would keep different hours, whether they were working or not. They had different hours from us, and they didn't eat with us or anything. They were fantastically beautiful and very kind, but they weren't involved with us in a hands-on way. The nannies took care of everything, and we had someone who drove us places. The garden was beautiful. As you know, California, it never gets cold. Orange trees, lemon trees, banana trees, flowers all year round. It seems like a far-off dream now, you know, and it was very beautiful. I mean, certainly it was.
Have you told your children what kind of life did you live in your childhood?
Well, they haven't really asked about, you know, my older children are reading the book and finding it interesting. But I think it's as if someone were telling me about when Abraham Lincoln was alive or something, you know. Oh yeah, did they have cars then, you know? It doesn't really, they can't relate to it at all. You know, this is what they know now. And my older children grew up in New York City. That's another thing. But I think it's healthy in certain ways in New York City.
What kind of books did you read when you had to be kept in bed during your crisis of polio?
I read everything that was written for children as a child. I mean, I think I did read just about everything that anyone could read. From Mark Twain, you know, we have The Secret Garden, all of everything that was there, you know, everything my parents bought for me. I used to go to the bookstore every Saturday with my father, and he would allow me to choose any book I wanted, sometimes 2 if I was very good, and we would bring them home together, walking together. And I think my happiest hours were spent reading. I've never stopped. It's provided me with the most peaceful and most rewarding part of my life, I think, apart from the children.
Mia, when do you come to television, to Peyton Place? At what point you decided that you wanted to work as a movie actress or an actress?
Well, after my father died, and I got my first job, I was 18. I had just turned 18, and as I said, I gave myself 3 months to see if I could get a job, and I did. I got a job in The Importance of Being Earnest, a play off Broadway in New York. And my mother and I were together in New York play. She was on Broadway and I was off Broadway. And people from the studios came to see me in this play and offered me a contract at 20th Century Fox and this TV series. I think they came because in the play with me was Vivien Leigh's boyfriend. And she came to see the play, and she was very kind. She was a friend of my mother's. My mother went to school with her. And she sent all these people to come and see me, casting directors, agents, directors, like that. And I got work from that play.
Did someone discover you the same way your mother was discovered in Ireland?
She was discovered in Ireland when she was 18. She was in a pub drinking, and this Hollywood producer was looking for a young Irish girl to bring to Hollywood to be in a movie with the Irish singer, John McCormick. And they just picked my mother out of her life in Ireland and took her and her mother to Hollywood. She never studied, no.
And you never had that need?
Oh, yes. I did when I was in New York in those early months. I went to Herbert Berghoff, and I went to Wynn Handman's studios, and I sat in on Lee Strasberg, but not for long, just about 6 months.
You appeared as a new, different type of teenager actress with no makeup, very natural.
They wanted to cut my hair. I had very long hair just because I didn't think about it. And it was the days of flips, big hair and everything. So they wanted to cut my hair, and I wouldn't let them. And they wanted to do a lot of eye makeup and a lot of face makeup and a lot of lipstick and all of those things. And I had just blonde eyebrows, so they would put, you know, fish eyebrows, black ones. And I looked so bad like that, and I would get so disoriented that I just, you know, would beg every morning. It was a battle in the makeup room not to put so much makeup on, and please don't cut my hair. I had a horse at the time, and I wanted to go riding every morning. And apart from being certain I didn't look good with all that makeup on, I didn't want the time of having to fuss with my hair and makeup. You know, I wanted to go riding my horse.
Was it when you cut your hair in that famous style of yours?
That was about a year later, and that was because people were writing to me about my hair, and I just thought it was silly, and I was getting a little vain about it. I thought, well, yeah, I do have nice hair, and I would look at it and things, and I thought, the old nun in me thought, you know, this hair has to go, because, you know, it's sinful to have something if you're proud of it. So I thought it was important as an actor, because my name in the show was Allison, and everybody compared me to Alice in Wonderland. So I thought it was important as a performer to get away from that, and important for me, just sort of spiritually, get rid of it. You know, too many people were writing about it. So then I cut it all the way off. Then, to my amazement, there must have been no news going on in the world that day, because it was such news that I cut my hair. I thought, what is wrong with people? It was just silly.
Why do you attract so much attention from the public? Have you ever thought about it?
I've asked myself many times, what about my hair? Why was that a big thing? You know, that made no sense. But some of the other things I can see why, you know, it was newsworthy. If I didn't see it at the time, I certainly see it now. I saw the danger at the time, but I didn't see it in a total perspective.
Mia, what did it feel like to be the daughter of Jane, Tarzan's companion?
Well, I was very proud of her. And she, by the time I was aware, she wasn't doing too many movies. So I mostly saw her in movies that were made before I was born. And it was just sort of amazing to see my mother, you know, flying through the trees. And we would play games ourselves, the kids, pretending I always wanted to be Tarzan. I never wanted to be Jane. Tarzan had all the fun.
You grew up in the movies, but your big moment came with Rosemary's Baby of Roman Polanski. How was that experience?
Well, no, I mean, of course I experienced it differently. It was really rewarding, really fun. It was a big deal for me.
It was at the time when you were already married to Frank Sinatra.
There was a terrible collision during the movie, because I was supposed to be in a movie with him, and I was going to do my movie, and then I was going to go and do his movie. But it took so long, Rosemary's Baby, it was supposed to take like 9 weeks, and instead it took almost 6 months, that I missed my start date on Frank Sinatra's movie. And so he said, well, leave Rosemary's Baby and come and do mine. You have an obligation here. And I said, I can't leave the movie. I've been working 3 months on it. How can I do that? And he said, you know, you just do it. And I understood that if I didn't, there was going to be big trouble. In the movie, during the movie, he sent his lawyer to the set with papers for me to sign.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And
he
so
was the man of decisions.
Really. So I signed everything, but of course I was in pieces.
How old were you, 21?
Yes.
What happened then? You went to India.
Yeah, then I went to India within 2 months of that, no less, a month and 6 weeks. And I went to India. My sister was meditating, and she said, you know, you should come to India and find some inner peace, you know. And, I'm a Catholic, so my religion wasn't enough for me at that time. I was in a real crisis, and I had some problems with the church at that time. I just couldn't get what I needed out of Catholicism, and it seemed like a good idea. I was desperate, so I went with my sister way into the Himalayas, and I was trying to meditate. The Beatles arrived with all the attendant publicity, photographers, everything. In the trees there were photographers, and I just thought, after a couple of weeks, I left that ashram and hitchhiked across India.
Well, they wrote a song about your sister, Prudence.
Yeah, they wrote, "Dear Prudence, won't you come out and play?" That one is for my sister Prudy, because she wouldn't come out of her room. She was a great meditator. I mean, she could meditate for 4 or 5 days without coming up for air, it seemed. We would leave her food outside her room, and it would be gone, or some days it wouldn't be gone. But she wouldn't come out, and everybody was a little worried about her. And the Beatles were her team buddies. The Maharishi put together like 3 groups of 3 team buddies, and hers were George Harrison and John Lennon, and they felt responsible for her. And she was tolerant of them. She thought they were sweet, but she just wanted to meditate. They would sit outside her room and play music for her.
Was it very difficult to overcome your breakup with Sinatra?
It just took me a long time. You know, I went to India, and then when I came back from India, I did a film, and then finally we got our divorce. And we came together a few times in between. And, you know, he's always wonderful. You know, he has the most wonderful side to him. And every time I saw him, or every time I thought about him, you know, I would be in love with him again. But it took a while, and finally we were divorced, I guess about a year after Rosemary's baby.
Mia, how did it feel to be in the middle of the audience when Frank Sinatra was singing and looking at you?
Well, I think every woman in the audience felt he was singing to her. I was no exception, but I had reason to believe he was singing to me. I don't know, he may have been thinking of Ava Gardner, but I thought he was singing to me.
Did you get to meet Ava Gardner?
Yes, she had an affair with my father when I was a child. So we knew each other from an awkward meeting. She bought my silence with a poodle puppy. And then after I was going with Frank, we would speak on the telephone, and then when I broke up with Frank, she was living in London and I was living in England, and we became close friends. And one day, in a rush of a jumble of emotion, she said, "Oh, Mia, you're the child that Frank and I never had." It was, yeah, really? It was such an odd thing, and I knew what she meant. And she was hugging me, and she was saying that. It was so sweet.
Then Andre Previn came to your life.
Yes.
And your family.
Yes.
And this happened in England.
Mm-hmm.
How did you meet with Andre Previn?
Well, I met him originally when we were all living in Beverly Hills, and we had mutual friends. But then he was just a friend, you know, not even a friend, an acquaintance. But then I met him in London, and both of our circumstances were different. And I was already divorced from Frank, and he was separated from his wife. So, you know, and he was very attractive, and he seemed attracted to me. So I was grateful. I was very lonely, and he's a wonderful guy. He's remained a good friend, as has Frank Sinatra, by the way.
That's what I've heard, that you have very good relationship with Frank Sinatra as well. With Andre, you had 3 boys, 3 children, and then came the first girl. Who was she?
Lark, from Saigon, and during the war, a little tiny baby. She was about 3 months old.
Mia, what made you to start adopting?
Well, Andre and I, our boys were then 3 years old, and we wanted to have another child. We wanted a larger family, but we didn't see any reason to make another baby when clearly there were children who needed homes already in the world. So we decided to adopt Lark.
And then came Daisy.
And then came Daisy, yeah. And it was also during the war. She was one of the last babies to leave Saigon. And then we adopted Suni from Korea. And by then I wanted to adopt disabled children because I got involved with the orphanages from the children, from Daisy and Lark. And I saw that the older children and the handicapped children were not getting homes. And the mixed race children, they weren't getting homes. And, you know, people just didn't want them. So I wanted them, you know, I wanted them. I wanted to help somehow. It seemed so unfair we had so much, and I loved children. And, you know, we had a big house and a lot of love and wonderful children. And to think of children just perishing in orphanages without enough to eat, with no education, no one to love them, it was, I felt a sense of responsibility, frankly, as a human being and as a mother.
For many people, it's difficult to understand why do you adopt disabled children?
Right. It's not for everyone. It may be more work than people want to put in. Maybe people have expectations that would not be met by having a child who is in any way limited. I mean, I understand that it's not for everyone, but for me, the child who is not, you know, so-called perfect, is beautiful. They too are God's children, and they need homes more than anyone. And in meeting the needs of a special child, it brings special rewards to the mother, to a parent.
You have 13 children.
Yes.
And do you have plans to maybe add some others?
No, I'm getting old.
No, you don't.
And I have a full house right now. My older children, I have my twins are 27. So
Married?
One is married and one is not. My 2 daughters are married. I have 3 grandchildren. So, you know, I feel this is enough. I have a 3-year-old. You know, I still to raise.
I saw her.
A lot of little kids, and they have a lot of energy. So this is it for me, definitely.
Thank you very much, Mia.
Thank you.
In Connecticut, Silvia Lemus.